It's go time.
Welcome to Quick Kicks here on Third Down Gamble, with your host Don Charbin, with special guest, Sean Campbell of TSN 690 in Montreal, the English radio voice of the Montreal Alouettes.
Sean Campbell, the voice of the Montreal Alouettes on TSN 690 radio, is here to join with us to talk all things Alouettes. Sean, it was a tough end to the 2025 season after the sort of Cinderella story of 2023. But from your perspective from the booth, how did you view, let's start with that season, especially Davis Alexander only playing 8 of 18 games. How did that kind of narrate the story for the Alouettes?
Well, I think it dictated everything for the season. It was he got hurt, and then can they get by without him? And it was up and down. McLeod, Bethel, Thompson, and then you get opportunity here, an opportunity there, and then you're like, well, maybe it's not the guy that you really want to go with, and they fluttered back and forth, and then David Alexander's getting healthy, and you just got to make it until he gets back, and then he comes back and he wins games, and then you see him score that touchdown late, and he hobbles into the end zone, and you're like, that's not good. And of course, that takes him out again for the season into the playoffs. And then I think everybody knew the way that it ended with him in the Grey Cup. And they're like, yeah, 90, 95%. And then you knew he wasn't 100%. And it was obvious with the way that he was throwing the ball in the Grey Cup. It was almost 10 yards shorter. And when you throw a football, you throw with your legs, and not having that hamstring at 100%, it clearly impeded his ability to be on his game. That really dictated the season. You talk about a different outcome. You have one healthy quarterback, and I understand you do the math, an 80% Davis Alexander versus anybody else. What do you take in this situation? I don't think the Owls regret anything. I think they just want to make sure that this season he is good to go and he's healthy, because I think if he was healthy all season long, you're talking about an MOP, you're talking about first place, you're talking about a bye, you're talking about maybe a Grey Cup. I don't want to hand them the Grey Cup just because if he was healthy. I think that clearly Saskatchewan was ready to rock and roll in that game, and they deserved the Grey Cup 100%. But that one injury was the season. You could get into a million other things, but if I'm flashing back at 2025 for the Alouettes, it will be the year of the Davis Alexander injury, even though we played in the Grey Cup. That's how I'm dictating the year.
Yeah, I would agree with you, because it sort of was the main story coming out of Montreal week to week. Is he going to be ready? Is he not? If he is, what kind of shape is he going to be in? Is that hamstring going to be good to go? I think back to the Eastern Final, like how he gutted out even then in that game, that last drive to get the Alouettes the win.
Yeah, he's pretty special, and I could go back to when he was the third string, and I love this. This is, to me, I'm a football guy, not just CFL. I love my NFL. I could watch any football game. Let's go U Sports. Let's go college, NCAA. You throw a football game on, I'm probably watching it. But I've said this at the professional level in the CFL and in the NFL. I think there's value in sitting and watching. Like, I see these guys come straight out of college and dropped into a professional star, and I'm like, it's very, very rare that translates. Usually it turns into, well, no, you're not good enough. You're going to be a backup somewhere else. We're going to get someone new. And I always say, if you look at the best of the best, like the best of the best, talk about in the NFL, Tom Brady sat. Patrick Mahomes sat for a year. Aaron Rodgers sat for 3. Go to the CFL, and you're talking about some of the best of the best. Anthony Calvillo sat and waited and learned. You're American. Most of these are American quarterbacks. We know there's a few Canadian. American quarterbacks coming to the CFL. You have to sit and watch and learn and understand the game. Anthony Calvillo sat and watched and learned. In Hamilton, didn't really go well. Then he watched with Tracy Ham. Bo Levi Mitchell in Calgary, third string, sat and watched and learned. And now look what he does on a year-to-year basis in the CFL. And I think Davis Alexander, look at the quarterbacks that were ahead of him that he sat and learned from. And he got that opportunity. And then when it was his turn. So talking to Danny Machocha, when he was a third string in his first year, he kind of looked at my partner Marco and I, Bruyette in the booth, and he just said, he goes, he's special, man. There's something there. And he didn't play. You saw him at the end of a fourth quarter in the preseason, and that was it. They watched him every day. And then, okay, and then another year went, he didn't play, and you saw him for 1 or 2 quarters in a preseason game. That's it. And then you saw what happened when Caleb Evans got hurt, and then it didn't really go well. And they're like, oh, Dave, you're like, oh, this guy's got something. And then there was no turning back. And I know they had to make that big decision contract-wise. Cody Fajardo, after winning the Grey Cup to Davis Alexander. But I think the Alouettes still, even with that injury, made the right choice. Not that they wouldn't have loved last year to have a Fajardo backing him up and then taking over the rest of the way. Might have been a different season for the Alouettes. But yes, sitting and waiting, and Davis Alexander, and you see that they know they had something special. I think you saw that in the East Final and how special he is. That's who he is. Davis Alexander is something very special. And I think what's fun about it is not only Montrealers are getting behind it, and I think it's important that Montreal has a strong franchise that wins and that it's up in the market. You see the struggles for the big markets, for Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, getting the support behind those teams. I think it's important for Montreal to have a strong franchise and a strong quarterback, but I think it's important for the league to have someone like Davis Alexander, because I think he transcends past Montreal. I think outside markets look at him and go, he's fun. Yeah, I like talking to him. I like seeing him in interviews. I think that there's a lot of personality there with the guy.
Well, it's sort of the same thing with Nathan Rourke in British Columbia, where he's not afraid of a microphone.
Yes.
He will let you know what he's thinking and feeling about whatever topic. He doesn't back away, but he's also so dynamic on the field. It's can't miss television.
Yeah. No, and then that's why I think it's really important for those markets, because I think we know what the market is when it comes to CFL in Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, maybe a lesser extent to the Alberta teams, but even Hamilton, that's their team. That's their team, where, the Owls are second cut to the Canadians, and they're fighting for every dollar and eye and conversation piece versus, CF Montreal versus this versus that. So having someone like Davis Alexander, it goes a long way.
Well, it's also a loyal Montreal crowd too, because I love Percival Molson Stadium, but it's not an easy get.
Yeah.
You have to climb a little bit to get there, but once there, and it's a little bit rustic underneath, but it's a great vista.
Yeah, that's a special venue. And, having the privilege to going to all the different buildings, they all have their own little quirks, and I like that. I love going up, and I love my walk up the mountain. I do. But I go, oh man, middle of summer, it's 32 degrees. Whew, this is going to be a rough one. And I've biked there before and taken the shuttle bus sometimes. I've done a whole bunch, but you get up there, and our broadcast booth is on the north side, which looks down. There's not a better view. The other thing is you are downtown. You're not. I've been around, and I'm always like, where's the stadium? Oh yeah, the Grey Cup was great with Winnipeg. That stadium's a little bit around the beaten path. I like being able to walk somewhere and get somewhere. I think it's one of the better views that you see in the city. It is beaten up. It is older. But what I will say, it's interesting, since the new ownership, Pierre-Carl Pelledo, and this is a demographic thing. I started covering this team in 2007, but watching the late 90s and the early 2000s and Anthony Cowfield coming in, and when they were selling out the building, the CFL football crowd, and this is, I don't have the numbers to back it up, but this is the feel as an outside observer. We're mainly Anglophone, elderly Anglophone fans, very much like the CFL demographic. I'll be honest, and then what I felt in the last couple of years with the changeover, you're getting younger Alouettes fan base and more Francophone Alouettes fan base. And I think with Danny Machucha running it, with the Quebec-born stars on this team, I know Dequois retired, but Conte Arcu, it just goes such a long way that they're there. And I look around the stadium versus what I used to see sit 10 rows in front of me versus what I see now, completely changed, which is exactly what the CFL needs.
And I see that a lot in Ottawa too. It's one of the stadiums where it is a very young crowd.
Yeah.
Saskatchewan, it's a mix. For a while there, the demographic was changing, but now that demographic is getting older, and they sort of have to renew again. But maybe with the advent of tailgating, that could change that.
Yeah, and winning, right? Winning goes a long way, and I know in Montreal, winning goes a long way. Having a good team, I know in the summer it's oh, you going to the Owls game? Yeah, let's go. People want to go. Oh, The Owls, oh yeah, they never win. But now that they're competitive and you know you're going to see a show and they're entertaining, it draws people, absolutely.
Well, it's interesting you say now that they're winning, because in this century that we've been in, the Alouettes have been to quite a few Grey Cups.
Yeah.
Of course, Anthony Calvillo led them to most of them, but they've been a fairly stellar franchise, except for that gap maybe in the 2010s.
Yeah, I think that was the gap that they lost, and you saw but that's the gap that if you don't win, you're going to go from having 22,000, which, that's pretty much the how you can go. You can't go any bigger in that stadium, to 13. Like, the winning is about 8,000 more seats in the stadium. And the gate revenue is very important, but I think at the same time, Pierre-Karl Pelado, he said it best in his first press conference. I'm glad he said it, because you don't really in this market get into owning a CFL franchise thinking I'm going to make money.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's like, I understand the market. I'm not here to make money. I'm here because I'm a football fan. And I love that as an owner. And like, that's an investment something that he truly loves in. He's going to let it. He's going to sit back. He kind of lets Danny do his thing. He sits there, and then he's now at one point, if he feels like he's bleeding too much, because it's not a franchise that makes money, but it's important that, he's not bleeding that much and he's at like 13,000. Because we could go back to the Wettenhalls and Robert Wettenhall, who I still to this day say saved football in Montreal, because Robert Wettenhall was a New York businessman that just wanted to have a toy. And he wasn't rich enough to own the New York Giants, but he was rich enough to own his own professional football team. And then it was just like his toy. And he just like, I don't care. If I lose $8 million a year, it doesn't matter. This is my team. And he walked around like he owned the place. That's the way he did it. Then he passed away, and Andrew Wettenhall didn't feel the same way, because Andrew's like, I don't want to lose $8 million a year. I want to get rid of this. Can I get rid of us? And then no one wanted to buy it because it wasn't. And then they went through that turmoil. I think that all had a factor in what happened in 2010. But now the reestablishment of ownership with Pierre-Karl Pelado, reestablishment of having someone like Danny Machocha run the show, I think really has changed how people feel about football in Montreal.
You look around, and I can't think of an ownership group or an owner in this league that isn't feeling the same way. You look at Omar Damon. Yeah. You look at what happened in Edmonton, even with Larry Thompson dying, the family said, we're here. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I think it's so important for a league like this that is so Canadian and grassroots, that the owners understand that. They understand there's going to be investment, there's going to be loss, but there's a greater good at the end of it.
Well, and one of the things I know with the new commissioner, Stuart Johnson, coming through, is that revenue streams, that's what he wants to improve, so that it isn't a question of whether or not you break even. It's a question of what kind of money do you make and how do you evaluate this franchise?
I think we saw that with the way that he came in and sweeping changes to rules, for better or worse. We're going to see starting this year with some of these rules. The bottom line for him is I need to sell this product. I want to sell this product. So what are the things that bother me the most about the game, right?
Clearly uprights in the field bothered him a lot.
Well, no, but like he was having conversations like we get, and it's funny. Like I haven't seen. I'm a wait and see guy on a lot of this, like, and the uprights moving. I was like, okay, but I understand when you get down to the 5-yard line, you can't throw over there. It's just they're in the way. So like you're impeded by that. So I'm like, yeah. Did it ever really bother me to the extent that it bothered Stuart Johnson? No, I'm a CFL guy. I was like, yeah, I'm used to it. But when he started talking about the play clock, and I'm like, this has bothered me forever. The play clock. That they're just the referee, the time's ticking away, but the ref hasn't started the other time. And I'm like, sometimes it's 5 seconds, sometimes it's 7 seconds. I'm like, you got to standardize some of these clocks and when they start. The team's on the same side. And I understand it has a lot to do, like in Percival Molson Stadium. I'm curious how it's going to look because it's so tight, those sidelines. But in my head, I'm like, it makes no sense that they're on the same side. You have two sidelines. Put them on opposite sides. And then he's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then he starts going on. And I remember listening to the press conference. We were airing it live on TSN 690. And he's going through. And then he's like, and then we're going to take away the 110 yards. I was like, whoa, like back up. But again, I'm going to do the wait and see on that. I'm not a proponent off the hop, but let's see. If it's a flop, then hopefully they pull it back. But I mean, that's hard to do with these fields the way they're built.
Exactly.
But then in my head it makes sense because I go to BMO Field, and then I see this end zone's in grass, that end zone's in turf. I'm like, that makes no sense. But then I'm like, these are the quirks of the CFL. You just kind of smile and nod and keep going. But we'll see what happens with some of this.
It's hard to come back once you shrink the field a little bit, and especially move the uprights.
Yeah,
that's going to take a lot of money to undo that if you want to do it. And Montreal is always the one they point to where the end zones are curved and cut off in the corners.
Yeah, they're shaved. They're shaved corners. And there was a game. I think there was a game that the Owls were playing, and they were on the road. And I was like, well, if that was in Montreal, that would have been incomplete. And it was like a great catch into the back corner. And I think it was against the Owls. And it was like, well, welcome to the quirks. It's kind of maybe it was a little bit like Major League Baseball and baseball stadiums, with every stadium being a little bit different.
Exactly, and going in what you're up against, and both teams are playing on the same field, so figure it out.
Yeah,
but this leads to something else. We'll get back more to the Alouettes, but what has been the reaction from the university there? What are they going to do? Because all of this field changing impacts U Sports.
Yeah.
Has there been a reaction from them? Are they saying, oh, yeah, we'll just make the change, no big deal, or what?
Yeah, I think that's more of a conversation CFL has to have with U Sports with these stadiums, because the Alouettes don't own that stadium. They rent it.
Well, same with Calgary and McMahon. It's the exact same thing.
The Alouettes locker room is at the Big O. The Big O is under construction. But all the players, all the locker room, all the offices is over at the Olympic Stadium. That's where their locker room. So when they go to practice, they have a field at Olympic Stadium that they practice out of. But say they go to practice, they all hop on buses and go to another practice field. When it's game day, it's ship all that equipment to the stadium and bring it into the locker room. They have to set up that stadium on game day. I think they start at like 4 a.m., putting the banners up, putting everything up that they can. When the season starts, it takes a while. The reaction from the university, I haven't gotten or know a concrete answer, so I don't have something specific, but that's more of a, like, across the U Sports. Clearly the CFL understands that there was going to be some sort of pushback. Does U Sports say, well, CFL's doing it, we're going to do it, or they're going to keep doing their own thing? Is there going to be little holes on the field where you take the thing up and then you make a hole over there, and then for these games the posts are going to be here, these games the posts are going to be here, the end zones are this long, but we're going to draw a line across at 15 yards because that's where they need to be. For the first game, and I know that the major moves are for a year from now. The smaller moves are going to be this year. I believe the clock and the sidelines are the ones going into play this year.
And the single point change.
And the single point. The single point, I love the rules, but I'm fine with it. I'm not clamoring over that. I don't think anybody wants to win on a missed field goal, right? Like, it just...
Well, you still technically could.
No. Yes. You still have to clear, but you have to, like, I know what you mean. You still could, but you still have to be able to get it out. I think that's a little bit different. I'm curious when the stadiums and that, but they still have a year for that one. So I'm not sure, but I guess we'll get a little more pushback when we get closer to that one.
You look at Calgary, they share a stadium with the University of Calgary. Montreal, obviously, with McGill.
Yeah.
You've got Winnipeg sharing with the University of Manitoba. This and Regina, the Rams play in Mosaic.
Yeah.
This has an impact. And I don't know. I remember when they went from 25-yard end zones to 20. And I'm watching CFL Classics on YouTube. And in Regina, they've got whitewash on the last 5 yards where the old end zone used to run.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could do it. And there's another physical problem that you have is it's going to be the 50, not the 55.
Yeah.
How do you paint the numbers? What do you do there?
There's a cost there, right? But that's all going to land on the CFL, like all this turf and with everything. So my guess is that's all landing on the CFL, and that's going to be someone's paying for it, right? The ownerships will have to pay for it, and they'll have to bring it in. They're clearly the owners are supporting Stuart Johnson in this move forward. I know the pushback we've heard from the longtime CFL fans and the CFL players that were like, and some of the coaches were like, why don't you consult with us? And maybe they should have consulted some universities and university sports. Hey, we're going to make a change. What do you guys think of doing? No, we don't like it. Oh, we're going to do it anyways. But they didn't even do that. Yeah, this is the cost of painting the fields. I look at Percival Molson Stadium and I look down, I'm like, well, this is going to look different. But we're in 2026. I assume someone with a higher pay grade than me can figure out how to do it.
I'm sure. But I know for Regina, and that's the one I'm most familiar with.
Yeah.
It's the city that's going to be footing the bill. Maybe in Calgary, maybe in Edmonton as well, that these changes will have to be taken up by somebody other than the ownership of the team. So you have to sell it to another constituency, whether it's local government or provincial government.
Get their logo on the field. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, that's true. You can sell it that way.
Yes, sell the paint job. I'm coming up with ideas here. CFL, I hope you're listening.
Well, they do. I know they do.
Yeah.
The 35-second clock, I totally agree with you. It is probably long overdue. And I always point to Mike O'Shea in Winnipeg. He could milk that clock better than anybody, and give him credit for being able to do it.
Yeah.
But it got boring to watch the Bombers play because they could run 14 plays in like 14 minutes.
Yeah. Like you do the late substitution and then that. So I thought they had to regulate that. And then the big question, and I remember because Stuart Johnson came on and he joined us 2 days after that announcement because he was doing his media tour. And I was like, dude, what about the last 3 minutes? Like, I don't want kneel downs here. And push came to shove. They said, we're going to discuss this one. They discussed it, and it's going to go back. The 3-minute rule is fine. I'm good with that too. I'm good with keeping the final 3 minutes the way the final 3 minutes that you could possibly get upwards of 6 different possessions because of the way that the clock works. And I think that's very important. It goes back to when Mark Trestman used to run the Alouettes. His saying was, a CFL game is not 60 minutes, it's 57 plus 3. That's the game. There's the 57 minutes, but then there's the plus 3 in the end. And that 3 minutes is so important.
Almost like a fifth quarter. That's the way I've always viewed it, because when you get down to the end, and we've seen some classic, unbelievable comebacks and games that have gone back and forth, all because of the way the clock is managed in that last 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm just glad they're not changing that.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with it as well. Now, talking about the Alouettes, one of the things that did happen, twofold, I'll start with, are departures. And the biggest one initially, and the Alouettes made the move, was to release Darnell Sankey. Did that come out of the wild and just all of a sudden show up at your doorstep, or what happened there?
I think when you looked at the cap consideration and you get to the veteran angle that Darnell Sankey, you know how it works with the CFL players. Every year you accrue is just more money that you're going to make. So the older you are, the more years you play. I think that number got a little too high for them versus what they think they could get. They love Darnell Sankey. There's no doubt about it that Danny Machocha wasn't looking at this and saying, oh, he's past his prime and I don't want him anymore. I think he just looked at it and said, that's at that cost, I could probably get my cheaper version with maybe Jeffrey Conte-Arcu, who I think is the front runner to fill that void. Now, let's see. And then now you have a Canadian starter right there at the middle linebacker. He was kind of in that middle. They played a lot of 3-4. He sat in there. You can't really replace Darnell Sankey, the leader, the person, and what he's able to do. I think Saskatchewan fans know that. I think everybody, around the league, from wherever he was in Calgary and from everywhere he's gone. And there was no doubt in my mind that when he left that he was going to get another job. There's another team who's like, oh, yeah, because every team needs a Darnell Sankey.
Yeah.
So I think that the Owls just probably did a cost benefit going. The drop off from Sankey to Conte-Arcu is probably less than the money that Conte-Arcu makes versus what Sankey makes. And then that allows you to do other moves. So yes, it's going to be a loss. It's going to be a lot. And I'm using Conte-Arcu as an example, but clearly somebody else can step up and fill that void. And I know from off-season moves and signings to these American players coming up that get signed that you'll never see at training camp, or at training camp, there's a new player that you hear their name and then you watch him once, you're like, yeah, okay, I know who this guy is now, but I never knew who he was or where he's coming from. I know that there are people, you get someone that works hard, that understands defenses, you can plop in the middle. So I think that was just a cost thing. I don't think it had anything to do with the Alouettes thinking he couldn't do the job anymore.
Marc-Antoine Duquois, he took a tough decision and he decided to retire.
Yeah.
He, to me, was a phenom out there. That one season where I think he had, 5 returns for touchdowns from any distance on the field. He was taking back fumbles and interceptions.
Yeah, those numbers went down this year, and I don't think it was anything to do with play. I think quarterbacks were very conscious of when he was out there. He's so quick. He had that speed and he has that athleticism. It was interesting because there was rumors, oh, they're going to, because he was a free agent. Oh, they're going to sign him, and you were thinking, oh, okay, the news tomorrow with Duquois is going to be a 2-year contract extension, and he's going to play a couple more. But he played late in university. Like he was one of those older university players, and he made the move to the CFL. He's not coming over like a lot of these American players that show up at 21, 22. Like he started his professional career almost at 25, and then now he's hitting 30. He plays his 5 years. He's like, yep, congratulations. And there's other options for him to do many things. Football's a dangerous sport too. You're putting your body out on the line. You want to have a livelihood, and not that he was in any dangerous things, but he had been banged up a couple of times, and I think he just saw where his body was and what he put it through. He won his Grey Cup. He represented Montreal and the organization to a T, and he made a life choice. Like there's no doubt in my mind he could still be playing in the CFL, but I think that was just more his choice. That replacement is going to be a little bit tougher. The one I've circled, and I'm curious, I don't know what they're going to do. I have not spoken with Noel Thorpe. It was something they had. It was a week ago. We had an opportunity to catch up with all the Alouettes coaches. Noel Thorpe wasn't there. I chatted with Jason Moss and Anthony Calvillo and Byron Archambault. But if Noel was there, I was going to ask about Sutherland coming in. He's been with the organization but hasn't been on the team. I think he was drafted 2 years ago. I'm curious if he's their future replacement there. Jonathan Sutherland. They have Arthur Hamlin. They've drafted him a couple. He's kind of filled in, but they've been pushing him down more into that kind of linebacker position lately, maybe because Duquois was there. I don't know if Hamlin's a long-term, but I think Sutherland on their depth chart, the way that I've heard them speak about him, it could be him replacing Duquois. We'll see. Again, if you're replacing Sankey with Conte Arcu, maybe you don't need the Canadian at the safety position as well, right? Like it depends on your Canadian content and how they want to build it. I'm not sure, but having a Duquois there, he's going to be missed. There's no doubt about it for the Alouettes defense.
And the Alouettes let go Deontay Ruffin as well. There's been a few players that defense is going to look a little different coming in 2026.
It will look different with the players. It will not look different with what they do on the field. It will still be a Noel Thorpe style defense, read and react, blitzing, creating chaos. So yes, you're going to see different names, and that's like they use when they play defense, they use everybody. Oh, your 4 down linemen, your 3 linebackers. It is very, very different the way that Noel Thorpe substitutions, getting in, fresh legs. So whoever, if you're on that defense, you're going to have to understand Noel Thorpe. So I'm curious if they're going to bring some veterans that he's coached with before, or you have these young guys that have to learn very quickly. So if there's 3-4 rookies on this defense, maybe it'll struggle at the beginning of the season because it takes a while for a lot of these players to understand and react to Noel Thorpe. Noel Thorpe is calling the plays from the sideline 3 seconds before that ball is snapped sometimes. And you see them all, they're all looking to the left. The line up 3-point set's gone. Like it's really reactionary how you have to play under Noel Thorpe. So it 100%. I don't know if they're going to be as punchy as they've been in the past, but if they get the right players, it could be an easy transition.
Well, I wonder too if Thorpe recognizes this and says, "Okay, we got to maybe dial it back a little bit,
maybe
play a little bit more zone."
It's very possible. Depends who's where, right, and who's filling up and who you can trust.
Exactly. And when you're a defensive coordinator, you want intelligence back there. And you mentioned up to 3 seconds before the snap that they're getting these calls.
Yeah.
It's more than read and react. You better know implicitly what you're supposed to be doing.
Oh, yeah. It's fun to watch. It's just, I'm like, how do these guys do it? But it's fun to watch. I love asking when I get to catch up with the players. I'm like, so what's it like to play for Noel Thorpe? And then they go off and they love it. So the defensive coordinators, they're always special.
Now, Jason Moss, he seems to be really excelling in Montreal, where I don't know in Edmonton if it was just too hard for him because he had such an association with the team.
Yeah.
That maybe the pressure was too great. But in Montreal, he seems to have found his groove.
Yeah. I think and he could go to just like his time as OC in Saskatchewan. he speaks a lot about, and ever since in 2023, 24, 25, it's been 3 seasons he's been here. I don't think that anybody's thinking about a change or anything. He's really comfortable. It was really interesting when he came because all the other candidates were all the assistants with the Alouettes. It was Calvillo, Noel Thorpe, Byron Archambault, the list goes on, right? All the candidates for the job were there, but Jason Motts gets it, and then he just keeps the whole staff. And I think that went such a long way with the organization, with the players, with the coaching staff. And then I think that helped him because it was an easier transition to come in. Yes, I'm the boss, so I'm going to do it this way. However, I have people in place that I can trust and that I can turn to. And then two, he spoke a lot. And I had a chance to speak with him last winter. So this is after 2 seasons. There was a great event. They did a pickleball tournament, and he was there. And man, he's really good at pickleball, by the way. And he's very competitive. And everybody says he's the best on the team. Like, he brought this pickleball courts in the locker room, and they play all the time. I was chatting with him and just talking about coming. He goes, I just like players who move and go elsewhere. I've learned from my time in Edmonton. I've learned from my time in Saskatchewan. He didn't go from one to the other and just try and be the same person. He progressed. He said, I realized he is incredibly, I think everybody understands, incredibly passionate, fiery to a T. But think about just even demeanor and aggressiveness and the way he portrayed himself as a player and to as a coach when he was with Edmonton and even as an OC, to where he is one of the coolest and calmest on the sidelines. You can see the steam come out every now and then with the Owls, but winning helps too. But cool and calm and under control when he's on those sidelines. And I think he realized when you're calling plays, and this year he's not the play caller this year. They moved it to Anthony Calvillo. But when you're calling plays and you have to get ready and something didn't go well, you can't dwell on that. You have to be able to move on and be ready and adjust right away, because if you're still thinking about what just happened, you can't get ready for what's coming up, especially as a head coach that calls plays. And I think that he has garnered enough coaching experience where it has benefited him for his time in Montreal. It's funny, you watch it, and you could go into the NHL, you could go to anything. The first time coaches, sometimes they have to go through and learn and this, and then the second time around, you're like, man, this guy's so much better because he understood where the mistakes were made. I think that's one of the reasons that he's progressed to where he is.
Sean Thomas Erlington also retires from the football team.
Yeah.
Basically a utility running back, but he did a lot of work that is needed. He did a lot of blocking for the quarterback to make sure he was still on his feet.
At the beginning of the season, training camp came. They finished the training camp with Stevie Scott, who has been part of the organization for a while. We saw him at the Grey Cup. Sean Thomas Erlington, and then Travis Tice, who came out of nowhere, the bowling ball that he is. And then those were the three. And then Scott and Tice were kind of coming back and forth. And then game one, they were like, Sean Thomas Erlington's the starting running back. I think a lot of people are like, really, this is like a lifetime backup. This and Jason Motts right away, and you mentioned it, protecting the quarterback. He said, it's about protecting my quarterback and making sure my quarterback gets it out in time, and a running back that knows when to release and be a safety valve. He never missed the block. Like, yes, he missed blocks, but he rarely missed a block. He ran smart. He ran when he needed to. He was running forward. And it's funny because you look at the end of the season for the Owls, and Thomas Erlington got hurt, Travis Tice got hurt, Stevie Scott came in because he was on the practice roster. The Alouettes, between the three, if you look at their numbers, go look at their numbers from last year, the Alouettes had a 1,200-yard running back with 6 touchdowns and another 600 in the air, like what you would want from a number one, but they just split it 3 ways. That's really what it was. So he 100% did his job. That was such a great guy for the community, bilingual player. He was always out in the city doing events year round, pure class act. And I think that the organization's happy for the time. I think he was pretty much done for the season, and then it was the East Final. Someone got banged him. He's like, you need to play. And he wasn't really ready, but he came in because they needed him.
Austin Mack is no longer with the team. Another release. He's wound up in Edmonton. I just wonder what happened to his star, because I think back to that 2023 Grey Cup and that 3rd and 5, and the Bombers are double teaming him.
Yeah.
And that's what creates the opening.
Yeah. Austin Mack, love the guy. And he loved it here. And I think he came in, he had his family, got to know Montreal. He did so well. The Alouettes offensive system it's Philpott, it's Speaker, and then it's Sneed, and then Mac got hurt and he came back and then they had Charleston Rambo kind of where they had Mac was. At that point, knowing what Mac was providing, they kind of knew they could just go south of the border and get another one for probably $20,000 cheaper. And this is not a slight on Mac. I think it's the ability that the Alouettes feel like they can go and find that talent. Mac in Edmonton will do very, very well, especially with the quarterback that they're going to be using next year. And there's that chemistry. I think it's good. And again, I don't think it's the Alouettes. They think it was just a money decision at that point. It was just got 3-4 years, and then they had to spend a little bit more on Philpott than they probably wanted to, but they couldn't give that up with the Canadian starter and dynamic player that he is. And Austin Mack, I think the Owls looked at that and said, we could find that south of the border, and there could be very well some player that I have not heard of that's coming out of a college that I have not heard of that's going to show up at training camp, and then you're going to look. It's kind of what happened with Austin Mack. He was there. I was like, all right, who's this? Oh, okay, a little NFL, a little this. Okay, came in. This guy's good. I think that's what you might see with the Alouettes at training camp filling that void.
It's becoming almost the same for receivers as for running backs. There's so many produced each year that you don't have to sweat it too much if someone leaves. There is a big pool there.
There's always someone. Yeah. Like whenever, 2007 and used to be like, practice roster, this, that. Like, no, I just get it. Like the guy on the practice roster is awesome. They're really, really good. It's a ratio thing. And the long time story of SJ Green sitting on the practice roster for 5 years with the Owls, right? There's talent there. There's 100% talent on these practice roster.
It's hard to believe that SJ Green was there for that long.
I say 5. I think it was 3.5. But yeah, but that was when the Alouettes, I think they had 3 1,000-yard receivers. You had Jamal Richardson, Ben Cahoon, Brian Bratton. There's another one that I'm trying to.
Kerry Watkins.
Yeah, it was tough for them to get him all in, especially he being American, right? You needed one of those Americans to be out.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that lineup was stacked. So you can understand how it would be difficult for a young receiver to get involved.
Hey, George Hopkins, Calgary Stampeders equipment manager. You're listening to the Third Down podcast. Enjoy it. I do.
Let's talk about the Grey Cup game itself. Now, you got to go this time.
Yeah.
Last time you were at home.
Mm-hmm.
Experience for you, what was that like?
Yeah, it was great. I spent the whole week in Winnipeg covering the events leading up to it. I wasn't calling the game because it was a national broadcast. So calling it since 2020, and the only 2 games I haven't called. Have missed a game is the 2 Grey Cup games, but I was able to do the pre and the post game show on the TSN radio network. That was a lot of fun. So it was a little bit different preparation wise, but getting out there, I love how Canadian the Grey Cup is. I mean, I'm clamoring for it to come back to Montreal at some point because I love when the community that is the CFL gets together. It's so much fun when you have all the parties, Spirit of Edmonton, and then going back and forth, everybody's hanging out, one fan here, one fan there. I remember covering the Grey Cup in 2008, but that was the last time. And I know that you need a stadium, you need somewhere to go, and they're renovating the Big O. Maybe by 2030 it'll be fixed. Who knows? But I miss it. But yeah, the Winnipeg, I thought it was great. Winnipeg's a great town to represent the CFL. I think that's fun. Going to the game and covering it was a great game. It goes down to the last throw. Unfortunate for the Alouettes, they came up short, but I would have just preferred if you knew that the quarterback was healthy to make the game just a little bit more, have a little bit more jam. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun to be there, fun to be in that atmosphere. And when you're watching a sporting event that goes down to the last throw, let's go. I'll take that every day.
Just a quick aside. The reason why the Olympic Stadium is being renovated right now is that they found it was far cheaper to renovate than to actually take it down.
Yep. Pretty much. They're just paying for it forever.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Now, the game itself, it had its ebbs and flows. It was a bit of a slow start. First point of the game is a single point.
Yeah.
The Alouettes look like they're ready for the fight. and they give it to Saskatchewan, but then at some point the Riders start to pull away.
Mm-hmm.
Did it ever feel like it was getting out of hand, that they were falling too far behind? Or
No. Yeah, I think it was the turnovers. You never want to turn over the ball. And just
and then right on the opening drive for the Alouettes.
yeah, and it was that throw that I was like, his leg's not ready. Like, just because it's just the throw that I've seen so often that didn't have the juice, and I don't know if there's another stronger arm than he has, and then if I don't want to call it a weak throw, but just versus what I'm used to seeing something like that. I don't think I ever thought for the Alouettes it was out of reach because it's CFL. And like I said, it came down to, yes, it was a little bit of a Hail Mary throw, but it did come down to the final throw, and there was still a final moment, even though it was an 8-point difference that you could have got back into it. So I never felt that the Alouettes were done, but I think it was just the turnovers and then chasing the game, not getting any rhythm. When you have drives that result in 0 points in the CFL, especially in a championship game, you got to make sure you're putting up points, even if it's the Alouettes settled for 3 more than anybody else this year. I think they had a record 56 field goals for the organization, and in the red zone, I think they had 30 field goals in the red zone on the season, which is way too often. Your red zone numbers have to be better than that, but I don't think I ever felt like the game was getting out of hand for them.
Got to talk about Shea Patterson and 3 minutes to go.
Yeah.
When that all happens, where is your heart, and can you find it anywhere after that?
Yeah,
goes?
My heart was fine. I think I'm pretty good at like that separation, but it's so you're trying to find like the reasons behind the decisions that are put in those moments, but those moments are created, and then you think about it. If it went another way, you're talking about the play a little bit differently, right? Like if the play goes another way, you're talking about it like, oh, what an interesting choice, or what a great choice that was. But because it went that way, you're like, I don't know if that should have been the decision. So then you get into the coaching staff and the coaching decisions about that. But yeah, the team had faith in these players coming in and doing the job. And when your number's called, like Shea Patterson, you're expected to perform. That's your job. That's you were there all week to do that. And it didn't happen. Yeah, I think that was a little bit disappointing for most Owls fans. I got a couple text messages at the time.
Did you bump into Shea Patterson afterward? Did you have a chance?
No, I did not. No. But, those guys feel it for sure.
You could tell it was so devastating. But even with that, the Alouettes still had another chance.
Yeah, that's it. So that's why I said, like, even then, it's the CFL. So as much as you lose that opportunity or those points on the board or that moment in the CFL, there's always another one.
There was a point in that last 3 minutes where Alexander rolls off to his left, goes to the sideline trying to get an extra yard, and you hear this primordial scream coming out of him.
Yeah.
Could you hear that at all? And did you know what was going on?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You could hear that. And in the moment he comes out of the pocket, you're like, uh-oh, because I flash back to when he scored that game-winning touchdown and then he was limping it, and you're just like, no. And just knowing how you could tell, because one, you're down, you did everything you can to be healthy, and then you're being so cautious. And I'm not like a medical expert or anything. So all week, he's never pushing it. So he still doesn't know what the limit is, because he can't test the limit, because if he tests the limit, he's going to get injured again. So even through practice, he's going at 50, 50, 50, 50. And then you just need that one run. It's like you're coming back from injury in hockey. You want to take a hit the first shift. So you say like, oh, I'm okay. You want to take a sprint for the first time. And I think that scream goes from trailing the game, the turnovers, and then realizing that everything's on the line. You just want to all out, and you're like, nope, I don't have it. It's gone. Like I pushed it too far, and now the off season, and I caught up with him in January, and he's still like, yeah, 95%. And I was like, been down that path before. So,
I mean, he still made a couple of great throws after that.
Oh, yeah.
The third down gamble that they got for the first down. And then, of course, that chuck for 65 yards where he found the end zone on one leg.
He still has, like, there's certain players that get that label gamer. I don't think anybody's going to debate that Davis Alexander is a gamer. And after watching that Grey Cup, even in a loss, I think everybody understands that he's a gamer. Last season being all about the hamstring and his injury, this season is about Can he play 18 games? And if he does, everyone will get a first glimpse of what could be the next generation of a quarterback superstar in the CFL. But then if he doesn't start or gets banged up, then that'll be the story again.
If you circle a few people, and I would put Davis Alexander in this group, Darren Flutie once said, and I asked him about it later, what he meant by it. But he said there's quarterbacks that you win with, and there's quarterbacks you win because of. And I would put Alexander in that category. He's the type of guy that could lead a team to victory.
100%. And then that room, that defense, they look up to him. Like they know that he's that, he has that leader. Like there's a lot of guys, your third string, second string, this, that. He commands, as a young guy, he still commands that room a whole lot. And I think that the organization is in a good spot with him right now.
Did the organization address the fall off? McLeod Bethel Thompson, Caleb Evans last year didn't have a great go of it. Unfortunately for Caleb Evans, he gets injured in BC in his first outing.
Yeah.
But the team didn't look the same. Now with Dustin Crum, do you think that fall off is going to be less?
Yeah, I'm curious about that with Dustin Crum. You know, watching him with Ottawa, when he was starting on the opposition, I never really go, well, here comes the Red Blacks. Like, he didn't have that kind of power. But again, like I said, young quarterbacks coming in and getting opportunities, sometimes you learn and you become better for that. And the more experience and the more that you play, the more games, because Dustin Crum's starting experience is limited. He has games, but that's also good to have. It's good that he went through those highs and lows with the Red Black. If there is a injury, do I think Crum would do a better job? I will say I think he would do a better job than McLeod Bethel Thompson did. And you could clearly see that frustration with Jason Moss at one point, just because there was just an inability to throw the ball more than 20 yards when they wanted to go down the field, or an inability to choose to do that, to put those 50-50 balls up, and McLeod Bethel Thompson just decided not to do that. Caleb Evans, Caleb Williams would have been nice, but Caleb Evans, the injury that was just too devastating, because I felt that he had been around the group and understood the group. And if he was healthy, he would be able to manage the team's offense enough to get them by without him. And I think that's what you would have to ask for Crum. McLeod Bethel Thompson couldn't do it. So if Crum could do what they wanted Evans to do, I think that would be the difference. They liked James Morgan when he played, but he just didn't have enough experience. That's all it was. I'm curious about Crum. I don't know what to expect, but maybe the experience that he's already gone through with Ottawa will help if that opportunity comes for him again.
Think back to his rookie year in that game against Winnipeg where he basically penned the Crum back, beating the Blue Bombers.
But that's what those young quarterbacks do, right? And Crum's got the legs where he likes to run and this, but you get excited about that. I go, but he's only running because he didn't see anything downfield because he was panicking. Young quarterbacks turn to their feet so early in that decision making, and that's one thing I'm curious with Crum that Anthony Calvillo will work on. Anthony Calvillo is so good at teaching his quarterbacks how to stay in the pocket. Like there is CFL, you have to learn to run, and you have to be able to run, and you have to have that weapon. However, you have to be able to teach the ability for the young quarterback to really trust that offensive line. You have eyes in the back of your head. Let the play develop, because the moment you go read one, read two, that young quarterback, that rookie, that guy that's only started a game and a half or had 3 snaps in the preseason, he's running. But watch like Davis Alexander, 1, 2, I'll reread 3, dump off, don't worry about it. Oh, I need to run, now I'll go run. Offensive lines help that, yes, but young quarterbacks go through that all the time.
Trey Ford is a classic example where he put up great numbers, but he rarely did it from the pocket.
Yep, exactly. And that's because he's super young. And I look at a guy like Trey Ford having that kind of athletic talent. Conversation with Anthony Calvillo could go a long way. Not that that's... But
let's look at that Eastern Conference coming up this season. You've got the Alouettes who were representing the East in the Grey Cup. I imagine the expectation is you're going back to Calgary this year and trying again.
Well, your quarterback's Davis Alexander. I think so.
What would it be if it was a Nathan Rourke versus David Alexander Grey Cup?
I think it would be fun. Right? But yeah, they have to get through that East. And even though there's only 4 teams. I think the East has gone through a lot of changes, right? Hamilton's expecting to be better. Like every year, they're like, oh, the transition is going to happen, those 4 teams, and is there going to be a crossover? And every year, these teams go, well, no, we're better. The Red Blacks right now think they're a better team than they were last year. The Ticats right now think they're a better team than they were last year. Toronto probably thinks that they're a better team than they were last year. I don't know, but
Chad Kelly, that's going to be the big.
That's there. And then the Alouettes will think that they're a better team than they were last year.
Montreal's got something to show for it. And that is, they went to the show, where Hamilton, I think, is gravely disappointed that they didn't get there.
Yeah.
But Ottawa, huge turnover.
Yeah.
New coaching staff in Toronto. There's a lot of sort of bubbling turmoil out east that maybe a good, strong start will get you a long way towards a Grey Cup berth.
Yeah, but you never know. Like, are they all just going to finish 9-9, or there's going to be one of those teams that's going to be disappointed and sitting at 5-13? Because that's clearly probably going to be Ottawa, because there's always Ottawa. No, but I like their changeover, and I was talking to some of the coaches, not in Ottawa, but in Montreal, and not to name names, but they were really intrigued of what that Ottawa team's going to do with the new coaching staff and how they're building it from kind of the ground up. But you do have to realize, and it's a little exercise I do every single year, because turnover in the CFL is really high from year to year. And especially at the beginning of the year, I love looking at the depth chart, and I see the rookies, and then you'll get the 1 of 8, right? So it's the first year, 8 years in the league, but first year with this team. They kind of have, if you look at the depth chart, and that's the way it looks. And usually before the game, I'll highlight all the first year players. So usually it's, okay, they have 10 rookies, and then they have 10 new players on the team. I'm like, that's a 20-player turnover. That is pretty high. I think Winnipeg this year was almost 23-player turnover. The Alouettes at the beginning of the year, I think it was 7. It goes such a long way if you're able to keep your offensive line. Like, I think about the offensive line with the Alouettes, but going back to the 20, I think it was 08 or 09, they were once the worst offensive line. They gave up like 50 sacks. But all 5 stayed together, and the next year, because they stayed together and then they learned, and they were all young, they were the best, right? So it doesn't mean if you're bad once, but working a defense together. Like, that's why I can't wait to see what the Alouettes number is. The Alouettes like 7 or 8, but now this year it looks like it might be a 15er, who knows? But I always go, it takes a while for teams that have such a high turnover to hit their stride versus teams that don't have a high turnover. Those guys go into the team meetings, the team strategy meetings, the coach's turnover also, right? The coach turnover in the Alouettes is nothing. So all those guys and all those players, if there's 35 players sticking around and there's 8 coaches that are sticking around out of the 9 coaches, they walk into training camp weeks ahead of some of the other teams that have to learn a playbook from scratch. So that's one of the things I'm curious about with Ottawa is what's that number? What's that number going to be for Montreal and those? So when I see the high turnover, I never expect strong starts from an organization.
And speaking of Ottawa, you get them twice in the preseason and 3 times before August 12th.
Yeah. Well, they got to play Ottawa all those times because Toronto, they're leaving to the end of the season because Toronto can't play at home.
That's right.
And that's going to be interesting to watch, the fact that Toronto is going to be playing neutral sites and then all over the place, and they're going to be displaced. I don't have a lot of faith in a team that has to go through something like that by the end of the season. It just might be too much to overcome. There's a lot of little mini. It was the same thing when the Alouettes didn't have the owner, and then they couldn't practice here. They couldn't practice. You're only allowed 4 hours a day, but the bus ride counts. And if it's a 50-minute bus ride, and then those little things add up. So I think not having your own facility, being around, or you're practicing here one day, you're practicing there one day. Oh, the equipment manager didn't get my stuff. Where's my number? I probably won't have I might put Toronto at the bottom of the division now.
Interesting. I wouldn't argue that. You're going to find out about Ottawa real fast because, like I said, five meetings with them before the middle of the summer is over. You're going to know exactly what they're about. And if Ottawa steals one from Montreal in there, that might be good for the Red Blacks.
Yeah, and I always say it is the hardest thing to do to beat a football team twice in one season, because you win that first game, you're going to come, not that this always happens, but you're going to come back with like that same strategy because it won, and then the other team changes, so then it's just a different game. Beating a team 3 times a season is just almost impossible, just with how strategy in football works. So if you play them 3 times, I don't really count the preseason, but you play them 3 times, then getting the sweep, the Ottawa's got to win at least one of those games, clearly.
When you look at the 26th season, what excites you the most about this Alouettes team, and where do you think ultimately they will be? I know you want them to be in Calgary, but where do you think they can be?
I think they could be in Calgary. I think, and then what excites me is watching Davis-Alexander for 18 games. I think that's really intriguing. I'm curious what the defense is going to look like with those holes like Sankey and how many Canadian starters, but I know what the defense will look like and act like because of Noel Thorpe being that guy. But I'm very, very curious about a full season with Davis-Alexander if he's healthy, because, we know all he does is win. Clearly, he's not going to go 18-0 if he plays all those games. He will lose games. What's his touchdown to interception ratio going to be like? How many yards does he throw for? And it's not to put like too much in saying breaking records. You don't really break records with some of those records that you have in the CFL, but could we see something really special? And that's a lot to put on a guy that's only played half a season as a starter, right? Because there's so much promise on him. But I think that there's an exciting little element of what he can do for sure.
Well, it was once said of Bo Levi Mitchell, when he was in his prime, he put a lot of receivers into the NFL. And I wonder if Davis-Alexander may be doing the same thing.
It's very possible. It's very, very possible.
Sean, thank you so much for doing this. People can hear you on TSN 690. Where else can people find and follow you on the socials?
Sean R. Campbell, that is Sean R. Campbell on X. I'm on the gram. And I am on the TikTok, though just a little bit, but I do the TikTok. I threw some CFL stuff on there when I was in the Grey Cup. I do, yeah. So there you go. It's all the same handle, Sean R. Campbell.
Awesome. Thanks so much for doing this. Always great to talk to you.
Have a good one.
Third Down Gamble uses the expert resources of the Canadian Football League and 3 Down Nation. For up-to-date, insightful statistics and analysis, please visit cfl.ca and 3downnation.com. The CFL on CBC theme music is used with written permission from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you for listening to our show. Third Down Gamble is hosted on Podbean. Follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @ThirdDownGamble. Join us again next time. The Third Down Gamble podcast. Audio worth watching.
'81 Grey Cup, Edmonton's Dave Cutler kicks a late 27-yard game-winning field goal. Final score: Edmonton 26, Ottawa 23.
All the drama of Grey Cup 81 riding on one kick. A field goal attempt by Dave Cutler from 27 yards out. 6 seconds remain in the clock. 3 people in the end zone to kick it back up. Cutler puts it through. And with 3 seconds to play, it's Edmonton 26, Ottawa 23.